Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you are watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. The US and China have agreed a framework for a potential trade deal to be finalized when Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping meet this week in South Korea. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the plan includes a TikTok agreement, a deferral of China's rare earth restrictions, and no 100% tariff hike as Beijing resumes large soybean purchases. China says H-6K bombers conducted simulated confrontation drills near Taiwan ahead of this week's Trump-Xi meeting in South Korea. Beijing claims the self-ruled island as its own, though Taipei says it has not seen unusual military activity recently. The first direct commercial flight between India and mainland China in more than 5 years has landed in Guangzhou, marking a cautious thaw in relations. The IndiGo service from Kolkata resumes non-stop air links suspended since 2020 amid the pandemic and geopolitical tensions. US President Donald Trump leaves Malaysia for the second leg of his Asia tour, with Air Force One departing Kuala Lumpur for Tokyo. He will meet Japan's new Prime Minister Sanai Takachi on Tuesday. Chinese Premier Li Qiang says relations with the European Union face both opportunities and new challenges, urging both sides to keep the partnership on the right track. Meeting European Council President Antonio Costa in Malaysia, he says Beijing is ready to advance agreements already reached with the European Union. South Korea's National Security Office says a meeting between US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is unlikely in the near future. Official Oh Hyun-joo says there is no concrete information despite media speculation during Trump's Asia trip. Argentine President Javier Milei's party scores a resounding midterm victory as voters back his free market reforms and tough austerity, giving him a stronger hand to reshape the economy. The result also pleases US President Donald Trump, who tied support to Milei's performance after a major financial bailout. The USS Gravely has docked in Trinidad and Tobago as the Trump administration intensifies pressure on Venezuela, with another US carrier group headed towards the region. President Nicolas Maduro denounces the move as a CIA-backed military provocation aiming to trigger a new eternal war. US and Chinese officials have signaled that a trade deal between the United States and China is close, and as US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping prepare to meet for the first time since 2019. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that both sides have come up with a framework for Trump and Xi to discuss in South Korea. Bessent has also said in an interview that he expects the sides to reach a deal that would defer China's threatened export controls on rare earths and avoid a 100% tariff that Trump has threatened to impose on Chinese goods. Let's listen in.
But I can tell you we had a very good 2 days, so I would expect that the threat of the 100% has gone away, as has the threat of the immediate imposition of the Chinese initiating a worldwide export control regime. Margaret, we reached a final deal on TikTok. We'd reached one in Madrid, and I believe that as of today, all the details are ironed out, and that will be for the two leaders to consummate that transaction on Thursday in Korea.
Now, in another interview, Bessent has stated that Beijing has agreed to make substantial purchases of US agricultural products, with the Treasury Secretary saying that he would make US soybean farmers feel very good. Meanwhile, Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng has said that sides have reached a basic consensus on the arrangements to address each side's concerns. According to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, Lifeng has stated that the two sides have agreed to finalise specific details and to proceed with domestic approval processes for the trade deal. Trump and Xi are expected to meet this week in South Korea on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Now we are joined by Venus Upadhyaya. He's a journalist at the Epoch Times, and she joins us live from Taipei in Taiwan. Thank you very much, Venus, for joining us. Some positive words coming there from US officials. Do you see any real concessions from the table from either side, or is this just diplomatic, positive mood music before this significant Xi-Trump meeting?
I think both the sides are rooting for their respective interests, and that's why the negotiations are happening. And I do not per se see any major compromise from either side. As the developments, from what I see from the developments, is that both sides are validating their own interests. And I think the major concern was here about Taiwan. If U.S. would what would be the U.S. message on Taiwan, during these negotiatory talks? And I think that U.S. has come very clearly on that there would basically be no concessions. Other than that, it's all about trade, and it's about, the major thing is about the rare earths, and that's why Xi and President Trump are meeting. So that's the context to the whatever has happened in Kuala Lumpur yesterday.
Yes, Venus, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the region. And tensions are once again rising between China and Taiwan, as reports suggest that several H-6K bombers flew near Taiwan in simulated confrontation drills just days before scheduled meetings of President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping in South Korea. The bombers, capable of carrying nuclear weapons, were joined by J-10 fighter jets in what Beijing called combat-oriented training under its Eastern Theater Command. The exercises focused on air blockades and precision strikes, showcasing China's readiness. However, Taipei's defense ministry reported only limited Chinese aircraft near its airspace in the past 24 hours. The drills come as Washington reaffirms its commitment to Taiwan's defense, while Beijing repeatedly calls for peaceful reunification. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te insists peace must be built on strength, not illusions, warning that paper promises alone can't secure peace. Meanwhile, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has warned that a multipolar world is coming, a remark seen as a veiled swipe at Washington. He urged countries to respect diversity and cooperation, emphasizing that no one should impose their will on others. Let's in fact listen in to what he said.
动辄退群所约，热衷编织阵营化小圈子，使多边主义遭受前所未有的挑战。但是，历史潮流无法逆转，多极世界正在到来。如果迷信实力至上，热衷强权霸凌，只会把世界推向弱肉强食的丛林，只会动摇国际体系和规则的根基。我们呼吁停止将经贸问题政治化，停止人为割裂全球市场，停止动辄挑起贸易。
Venus joins us once again from Taipei to discuss this. Venus, let's start, of course, with those bombers that have been flying near the self-governed island, which is where you are. as these trade talks have been happening. Is China using these bomber flights near Taiwan to remind Washington that trade is not the only pressure point here?
I think China is recreating its policy on Taiwan. China is doing what it has been always doing and giving the same kind of messages. However, we also have to note that the news about the Chinese, Chinese air activity is mostly disclosed on the Chinese official Weibo channel. But as you said, that the Taiwanese Defense Ministry, hasn't validated it. Fighter jets and some other activity. They haven't talked about any air intrusion with any nuclear capabilities. So I think obviously it's an intimidating message, and it's likely to recreate Chinese long-standing policy on Taiwan. So while the U.S. president has said that he is going to talk Taiwan with Xi Jinping, which today's news reports say that the idea to bring Taiwan on the table, on the talks that are going to happen on Thursday between Xi Jinping and Trump, it was China's idea. So we have to see what happens on Thursday. The U.S. side has said that they are not going to make any compromises on Taiwan. So overall, the situation is that the U.S. is recreating its long-standing policy on Taiwan, while China is also recreating its long-standing policy on Taiwan, which most likely looks like it's going to be the status quo.
Venus, of course, you're joining us from the Taiwanese capital in the media circuit as well. What's the feeling over there when you get updates like this? What's the public saying, the public sentiment?
The usual day. So you see, I have this Taipei Times newspaper in my hand, and what I said is what the newspaper says. But there's something very interesting which I noted, and it's the cover page news here, the top news on today's Taipei Times. And here, which is written by a staff writer with CNA. CNA is their state news agency, Taiwanese state news agency. A very interesting thing is that it mentions the meeting as a meeting between the world's two superpowers. So I think that really struck me because I feel that the Taiwanese are very pragmatic. They understand that both US and China are two leading superpowers, and they know that they are somewhere settled between the two. And they know what they need to do, for their interest.
Yes, do stay with us, Venus. We have one final Chinese diplomatic update to bring our audience. The Chinese Premier Li Qiang has said that Beijing is ready to work with the European Union to keep bilateral relations on the right track. Speaking in Kuala Lumpur during a meeting with European Council President Antonio Costa, Li noted that China-EU ties are at a crucial stage, facing both new opportunities and emerging challenges. He called for steady dialogue and implementation of the consensus already reached between the two sides. The meeting took place on the sidelines of the East Asia Cooperation Leaders Summit, where both leaders emphasized maintaining stability and cooperation amid growing global economic and security uncertainties. Venus, of course, there has been huge suspicion from Europe when it comes to China relations. That includes the backdrop of this huge embassy, which is being built in London, which China declines to provide all the plans for. The German foreign minister has also cancelled his plans to visit Beijing, citing security concerns as well. However, from Brussels' point of view, isn't this a relationship increasingly defined by security suspicion and now not economic trust?
I think there are wide-ranging issues between China and European Union, and I think they are being addressed. But as per the developments that have happened recently in the last few days, and if you go through the statement that has come from the European Union just yesterday, so obviously they talk about trade, they talk about trade tensions. European Union talks about decreasing the trade deficit and all of those things, and addressing the, addressing concerns between each other. But what is very striking in the statement is that European Union talks about China playing a role in ending the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And I think the same message comes from Rubio as well, Secretary of State Rubio, in a statement in a press interaction that he had on the airplane yesterday. He talks about Trump reaching out to President Xi Jinping and checking out the possibility of China playing a role in reaching out to Russia for ending the Ukraine conflict. And I think that's where we are heading towards. So it will be interesting to see what happens on Thursday.
Yes, Venus Udapaya, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Pleasure to have you on, and thank you for taking the time. We now move on once again to another development, and the first direct commercial flight between mainland China and India in over 5 years landed in Guangzhou earlier today. According to airport information, this marks a symbolic step in cautiously warming ties between the world's two most populous nations. IndiGo flight 6E1703 from Kolkata touched down in the southern Chinese city shortly before 4 a.m. local time, officially resuming non-stop air links that had been suspended since 2020 due to the pandemic and subsequent geopolitical tensions. Passengers travelling on the first direct flights between India and mainland China after a 5-year suspension have welcomed their restart, saying that the journey was smooth and easy. Let's take a listen in.
I have come for some furniture purpose, and this is my first visit to Guangzhou, and it was such a smooth and an easy, lovable trip because there was no hopping or anything. It was a direct flight. I sat in Kolkata, I landed here, and it is very smooth. I mean, I could come again and again with this flight.
I was going on the 24, 25, but when I came to know that there is a direct flight to India, so I rescheduled my plan, and I'm just booked my ticket to the Kolkata, right? And now I can see I'm directly flying to India from China. This is the first time for me.
This is the only flight. Otherwise, you have to make a long detour. Either you have to go by Bangkok or by Singapore or by Hong Kong. So it adds up, more. I came here for the flight time was just about, say, 3 hours 40 minutes. So I think you have to add another 8 hours to it, 8 or 9 hours. If you want, had it been day before yesterday, let's put it as simple as that.
We're now joined by Vandana Singh. She is an aviation expert and joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Vandana, for joining us here on NewsX World. Before we get into the diplomatic implications, what will this mean? Of course, this is the first time this has happened in 5 years for the broader tourism and aviation industry here in India, if this were to increase.
Thank you, Thomas, for having me on your
Pleasure.
show. It's indeed an honor. And to just elucidate on what you just mentioned, let's not forget that you're looking at the two largest Asian giants here, China and India, India and China. The biggest trading partners, which is China and India. You're looking at a trade crossing 130 billion US dollars. Now, when something like this happens in the overall aviation spectrum, and that we know it's happened after 2020, after the geopolitical tensions, after the pandemic, as you rightfully mentioned, then it's such a welcome sign because you reach mainland China, business is business. Business has to be conducted. There is people-to-people exchanges. There is a huge tourism boost. There is a huge diplomatic boost after a series of meetings between our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and the Chinese President, Xi Jinping. I believe it's taken a new leap. So despite any other geopolitical tensions, any other trade issues, it is a welcome sign to the people. There is huge exports that's happening. There is huge imports that's happening. I just mentioned the figure of 130 billion to you and growing. And you're looking at electronics, you're looking at pharmaceuticals, you are looking at soft toys, you're looking all of it that is going to grow and beyond. And with the ease of, China Southern coming in, China Eastern coming in, IndiGo flying in with daily flights from Kolkata to Guangzhou, and soon from 7th November we have New Delhi, Shanghai, and New Delhi, Guangzhou starting. I think it's a huge boost to trade, to tourism, to people relationship, and to making life easier, because anyway we were all traveling. I've traveled many times, but yes, it has always been a detour via Hong Kong or Bangkok, Singapore, as it was just mentioned by another passenger. And I think this just makes things better, easier, easy, and a good restart, I would say, after 5 years. Over to you, Thomas.
Yes, and Vandana, of course, there is nearly 3 billion people between the two countries. What are the tourism and other industry boosts that we might see now that travel between these two bordering nations will be so much easier?
Absolutely. So as we know, a lot of conferences are held on both sides for tourism and trade. And it's easier for now people to go in and out. They just have to fly direct. So obviously on one side, the aviation industry is taking a boost for both the Asian giants. On the other side, the overall business, which was anyway happening indirectly, will happen in a more direct fashion. When it comes to tourism, obviously, we Indians love to go to China. We love to explore China, and so do the Chinese. They love to come to India. So with that happening, we expect a huge tourism boost that's going to happen in both the countries. And I expect this to just grow from here. There is no looking back. You mentioned the population. We are the two largest populated countries in the world. And we love to travel. And it is for business, it is for pleasure, it is for tourism as such. The whole tourism industry, the aviation industry, the business spectrum, the diplomatic spectrum, all of the landscape is taking a boost here. And it's such a welcome step right now, considering the geopolitical tensions all over the world that are happening right now. So I think it's a real welcome sign, and we see things to grow from here. 130 billion is just a figure that I'm giving you. It's surely going to double and triple in the coming years.
And of course, Vandana, before we move on, what does this say about India's broader strategy? Decoupling from China where it must, but reconnecting to it where it can.
Absolutely. I think it's very intelligent. It's the right way to go ahead. I mean, one cannot be arm twisted, by another superpower. One has to look at one's own national interest. One has to look at one's neighbors. China is our neighbor. And having good neighborly relationship, good friendship, I think it's only a way to boost peace and diplomacy, amongst other things. So I think looking forward, if China and India were to come even closer, as they have, I think it's a big message to the world as well, that look, we know how to do our trade equations. We know how to do our, keep our momentum going. We know how to keep our economies growing, and we will do it. So we are not going to be dictated by one or the other, other countries to say that, look, we won't do business with you, or we won't do business with you. We as a country, India, know whom to do business with, how to do business with, and why to do business with. Thomas,
yes.
over to you.
Vandana, do stay with us. We have Further story coming up at our audience. A fighter jet and a helicopter based off the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz both crashed into the South China Sea within 30 minutes of each other. The 3 crew members of the MH-60R Seahawk helicopter were rescued, and the 2 aviators in the FA-18F Super Hornet fighter jet were ejected and were recovered safely. And all 5 are now in safe and stable condition, the fleet said in a statement. The causes of the 2 crashes were under investigation. The USS Nimitz is returning home to its port in the naval ship, the Kitsap in Washington state, after having been deployed to the Middle East for most of the summer as part of the US response to attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels on commercial shipping. The carrier is on its final deployment before decommissioning. Vandana joins us once again. Vandana, 2 US carrier-based aircrafts down in 30 minutes. Does this look like an operational strain from extended deployments in contested waters here?
Absolutely, Thomas. It looks to me like an operational strain. Of course, the investigations have to take a deeper dive, and they have to go into why this has happened within 30 minutes of each other. We know this is the South China Sea. We know that, as you rightfully mentioned, the USS Nimitz is going to be decommissioned after 50 years of service. And should the investigation be looking into maintenance? Should they be looking into aging fleet? Should they be looking into modernization? Should they be looking into more regulatory reforms? A lot of things need to be looked at from that perspective, because, I'm seeing it as a pattern. There is also a pattern to it. Earlier, the USS Harrier, we saw there were 3 accidents over there, and one in which their own fleet accidentally shot the helicopter. So the question is, they need to analyze this pattern, why this has happened. They need to look it into in a very in-depth manner and analyze how could this happen within 30 minutes of each other. What were the reasons behind it? Was it technical? Was it mechanical? Was it pilot? Was it weather conditions? Or was it something else that is being overlooked at this point of time? So it has to be a deep dive into it. And the good point here is that the 5 crew have been saved, 3 on one and 2 on the chopper. They have been saved and they have been rescued. So hats off to the rescue operations, that they were carried out very nicely, and that they are full survivors here. There's no casualty here. But beyond it, there is a deep concern. There is a question mark, because as I said, looking at the geopolitical tensions, looking at the job the USS Nimitz was doing in the South China Sea, which I don't have to name right now, you have to look at the operational constraints. What was it? What happened? All of it has to be examined, and they have to really come out with explanations as to how they want to move forward from here. And this is concerning. Please see the pattern right from the beginning, and see it from for this year at least, see the pattern, and it's right before you. So I'm a bit skeptical about it. I wouldn't just say that it just happened just like that, and that it can happen, and it's as simple as that. No, I think there is more to it, which needs to be examined. Now, over to you, Thomas.
Yes, Vandana Singh, thank you very much for joining us and taking the time. Pleasure to have you. Now for our final story of the hour. And Chinese Premier Li Qiang has said that China is ready to maintain strategic communication with Australia, expand mutually beneficial cooperation, and keep working together to build a more mature and stable China-Australia comprehensive strategic partnership. Li has made these remarks while meeting with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. He also noted that China-Australia relations at present are showing a positive trend. Li has added that China is willing to work with Australia to tap the cooperation potential in the fields of green economy, high-tech industries and the digital sector. He also said that China hopes Australia will provide an open, transparent and non-discriminatory environment for Chinese enterprises to invest and operate in Australia. And that's a wrap on today's China Report. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.